Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the June 24th edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. I'm the Intuit Small Business Ecosystem Evangelist. You can follow me on Twitter at David Leary. You can follow Intuit Developer at Intuit Dev on Twitter. Today we have an exciting panel. Basically, the whole topic today is going to be firm of the future. So, studied firms of the future are experts in helping the firm and training the firms of the future, and I have 4 people that are the firm of the futures and firms of the future, not really the futures. And so I'm going to introduce you to all of them. Before we do that, just a couple of notes in general. I've shared out in the showcase some links. One of the links is to QuickBooks Connect. Make sure you're thinking about QuickBooks Connect. You plan on coming to QuickBooks Connect. You're getting registered for QuickBooks Connect. Another link I shared out is the link to all the future Hangout events. So we're not going to do one next week because of the holiday weekend. Nobody tends to come to those. But on the 15th of July, you definitely want to come because we're going to have somebody from the apps.com team come on and talk about the new recommendation engine for apps. So that apps.com now inside of QuickBooks Online will recommend apps based on the type of company, other information in their QuickBooks file. And so you as a developer want to understand that a little bit more because it's now going to, especially for niche apps, you're really going to see a benefit when if you're an app for asphalt businesses, your app will get surfaced up in front of the asphalt businesses a lot better than it has before in the past. So it's for them, and that'll be spoken of. And then the other big thing is if you haven't registered yet, you haven't done this yet, any new app developers that get on the platform between January 1st, 2016 and August 15th, 2016 are eligible for the Small Business App Showdown. We are giving away $100,000. But even if you don't win the $100,000, the top 10 prizes are great because what we're doing is we're taking the top 10 apps that leading up to this, we're going to bring them into QuickBooks Connect. We're going to give you the top 10 apps floor space on the expo floor, not your own booth, but there'll be a section just for the Showdown apps. And then we are going to actually pay for your hotel while you're there. So it's a really good way for you to get that to QuickBooks Connect. It's a good way to get in front of all the attendees at QuickBooks Connect, and then one app's going to get the $100,000. So if you haven't registered yet, you definitely want to do that. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and flip off my camera here and let everybody see everybody's smiling faces this morning. Stop sharing. And apparently I am stopped sharing. Hey, this is me. I'm David Leary. Let me go ahead and introduce everybody that's on our panel today. So first person I brought on is Ian Vacin. He is currently at Carbon. At one time, he was a former Intuit employee. Ian spent the last year and a half talking to about 1,200 accountants about their workflows through roundtables and focus groups. So he just has a lot of insights on what's in the mind of firms of the future. Joe Woodard is on. Everybody should know who he is by now, but Joe Woodard specializes in training a lot of the firms of the future and helps them figure out their workflows, going niche, getting to the cloud, etc. And then I actually have 4 firm of the future members on. Caleb Jenkins, who essentially right now I think holds the record for the youngest pro advisor ever, and he also got one of the top 100 pro advisors this year, right? Is that correct, Caleb?
That is correct. Yeah, I was top 100 plus the top 10 pro advisor was top up and comer category winner. So.
I think David stalled out.
Hey, is that better? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
What was the last thing I said?
Last thing was what Caleb said.
Oh, what Caleb said? Okay, got it. So, yes, beyond Caleb, I also have Marnie Stretch and Laura Redmond, who are also firms of the future. They've been historically top 100, top 10 QuickBooks Pro advisors in the past. And then I also have Joe Carufe, who's from Two Roads, which is the firm of the future. Joe does some of the back-end stuff for automation, looks at apps, workflows, and Joe can speak to kind of their movement to the cloud. Joe can speak to how he thinks he can get every employee at his company handling 50 or 100 clients at a time just because of automation and apps. So without further ado, everybody, you can kind of stay on mute, but Joe, Woodard, if you'd unmute, and I'd love for you to kind of give yourself a little introduction, and then if you could just explain, like in your terms, what the firm of the future is.
Yeah, I'd love to, David, and thanks for having me on. The firm of the future is a firm that isn't just prepared for the future, it's a firm that is adopting the future in the present. So ironically, the firm of the future is a form of the firm of now, because as Jim McGinnis at Intuit says, the future is now. The future is now. It is just not evenly distributed. And any firm that adopts the firm of the future mantle is taking advantage and creating competitive advantage out of that unequal distribution of the future. And it's not because they have some privilege that other firms don't have. It just means that they have their eyes on the ball. And specifically, it means that they have adopted all three of the following pillars by which Intuit describes the firm of the future, and I believe it's very thorough. The pillar number one is...
Joe,
yes.
Before you jump into the pillars, you turned your camera off. Flip them on so that way people can see you as you talk about these three pillars.
Is it not working now?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, it was weird because it was showing in my Google environment that I was on. So, okay, so the three pillars of the firm of the future are to first be online. Now that means so much more than just using online software. It means using online software strategically, taking advantage of its collaborative pieces, taking advantage of its advanced integration, which is not available in desktop solutions, and getting your data and your client's data free from what Brad Smith has in the past called the prison of data, called a C drive. And by liberating the data out of that C drive, it frees up, with extreme security, privacy, and permissions, it frees you up to allow third-party software products to talk to the data, to feed out the data in a very, very secure way to your clients, to your employees, to your team members, to yourself. And with this entire online strategy, which I think is going to be an undercurrent of today's entire conversation, you will propel yourself forward in both efficiency and effectiveness. Both have to be important measurements for the firm to be appropriating the future. Now, the second is also an online piece, but it is a form of marketing your firm that is an adoption of a future principle. The conventional way of shouting value components out in sound bites across airwaves, across billboards, across postcards, that model is not reflective of the future. Instead, the future is content marketing, and not just any content marketing, online content marketing, that tells a cohesive and thorough brand story. And that brand then reflects the effect that you have on your clients. So firms that have unequally distributed the future are firms that tell the value they can bring small businesses and the value they brought past small businesses through building online communities. And that includes the sharing of their expertise and many times the establishment of a niche and reinforcing the value they bring that niche through these online communities. All right, then the third pillar is become a trusted advisor. And the first two largely enable the third, because with the data liberated, with a vision, mission, and purpose defined for the firm, and a brand identity defined, and a community of clientele defined, and a front line of the ideal client waiting at your front door established, then you have the ability, the power to have the client base you want. And that means letting those ideal clients in the front door, sometimes pushing the non-ideal real litmus test, according to Firm of the Future, of what's ideal, what's not ideal. Allow me to transform them, to be an agent for them, to benefit them as a financial and management consultant, not just as a tax preparer, compliance officer, assurance service provider, or, in short, a historian. All right, so there's the firm of the future, David, as I see it.
Cool. Thank you, Joe. And one thing that I find really interesting with that is some of those those principles. Two of those principles are, to some extent, they apply to app developers, right? App developers move away from the C drive, get your app SaaS, get into the cloud, where you need that, and then how you market it. You just can't stand with a megaphone and just get on apps.com. It's like, I'm here. You know, you have to, build those relationships, content market, clearly explain your value. So it's really, the pillars are very, very interesting and similar. The only thing that I could see app developers can't do, they can't be the trusted advisor to small business, but that's where the relationship with the accountants come in, because now you partner with the accountants and you can go, kind of go from there.
Right.
So other than that, I think if you guys, I would like everybody, because Joe, you even have your own firm. I think the only person here that doesn't have their own firm is Ian. But I would like everybody to kind of just one at a time, and we can go left to right here, starting with Caleb. I'd love to have everybody kind of talk about what role apps play inside your own firm. Caleb, do you want to jump in?
Okay. Fair enough. So apps, they play a critical role. One question would be just the ability to integrate to become a workflow automated and all that. So that would be the biggest thing, is to become.
Caleb?
Yes.
Can you hold your microphone up a little bit higher? It's hard to hear your audio.
All right, let me switch headphones here. Why don't you go to someone else here?
All right, cool. Let's slide over. Hey, Joe at Two Roads, how about you jump in?
Yeah, for sure. So we spent the last 18 months moving our entire firm to QBO. So we've got about 120 accounts on QBO now. And apps for us, they just bolster the environment that we have in the cloud. So we've kind of got some staple products that are across all industries, and then we can plug and play apps for industry-specific uses, like David's example of an asphalt company. That's where QBO gets really powerful for us. Where cloud software gets powerful is finding an app developer that can really cut down our time on data entry, but also provide really clean, good-looking financials.
Got it. And Joe, I know obviously you still have Joe Woodard. You still have a firm. Do you want to talk about how apps play a role in your firm, or even how apps play a role in Woodard, the Woodard Consulting Group? Because I know you use apps to run that.
That is correct. We don't have a full-featured accounting firm like we have had in the past, because our primary focus is empowering other accounting providers and professionals to do that better. So we're primarily coaches, but we do maintain a small to medium-sized business practice, because we want to make sure that what we are putting out has been tested, is practical, and has practical implications. So in that laboratory, we call it, now that laboratory is as big as some pro-advisor firms, but in that laboratory that we, as we call it, we do primarily work with CRM solutions that are platforms for the way that we can develop out a business operation. Now, in the past, we've done it solely through Method CRM platform, which is so much bigger than CRM. And then we are getting deeply invested over the next 12 months in Salesforce as well, because we think that'll widen the reach of those that we can do. Now, in all cases, the CRM solutions and the platforms that we work with integrate with QuickBooks, so it ties everything back to the back office. But we only take on those clients for those kinds of engagements where the off-the-shelf solutions won't work. They have extremely customized workflow, or they need that in order to maximize efficiency or effectiveness. Or the third category is they are in a category of their own, a micro niche, where there just simply isn't a solution that will accommodate them. And to go out and code that, to hard code that from scratch, would be cost prohibitive. So that's how we leverage the cloud.
Got it. Laura, do you want to jump in, and then we'll get Marnie next?
Yeah, hi. I'm Laura Redmond, and I run Redmond Accounting. Apps are integral to our firm because we've based our entire service delivery on them. We, as Joe said, a firm of the future is using a lot of technology, and we also found ourselves leaning on that to better service our clients. So we went totally paperless in '07. We moved everyone to QBO in 2011. Went all fixed fee in 2011, and then around 2010 we built Arrow workflows so that we could manage our multiple staff and multiple clients. So not only are apps integral to our service delivery for our accounting clients, but we now understand the developer side of things and how important it is to share with our community. So we like to, you know, this accounting community is so wonderful, and I know it first from Joe's Scaling New Heights conference. 2010 was my first conference, and so we found it so amazing how much everyone gives and shares with each other in that community, and so we're right there with it. Building Arrow workflow, and also I write the QBO cert and advanced cert, so as much as I learn about QBO, I'm trying to pass that on, teaching at Joe's conference, that sort of thing. So
yeah,
apps are everything to me.
Yeah, and then when you do the QBO cert now, there's questions about apps in the actual QuickBooks Online certification. So if any of the accountants are watching, you're going to have to learn apps just to get your QuickBooks certification.
Absolutely, because I mean, Intuit stated QBO is a platform, right? More than just a software program. So they've built it to plug in apps. So it's everything.
Got it. And Marnie, how about you? How do apps play a role in your practice?
Sure, yeah. I'm Marnie, and I'm based in Canada, so we've been a little slower here to adopt QBO. We've only had it for, what, 3-4 years. The time flies. It seems like it was just yesterday. But for me, I would say, you know, of course, there's apps that help my customers, and there's apps that help me as well. So it's very exciting when you can meet a customer's needs more specifically than you used to do so. And apps and QBO, that whole environment, allows us, as I think pro advisors and bookkeepers and accountants, to really sort of create whatever kind of business we want to have. So for example, I live part of the year in Quebec now, and I wouldn't have been able to do that in my old, you know, QBD environment where I'm visiting customers, you know, every day of the week. So really, by and large, I'm remote. I work like 95% remotely, and I like to do that. Of course, I like to see customers when I can, but it allows me that flexibility, and I think it really opens up a world of possibilities for pro advisors to be able to sort of create and design the business that they want to have. And of course, it allows us to carve out a niche if that's what we want to do as well, even more so than we used to be able to. The trick for me, the challenge for me, is staying on top of all the apps that are out there, because there are hundreds and hundreds, and you know, to have a few that you're really familiar with, to have those in your back pocket. Somebody said the staples of your business, so we certainly have those, and then being able to sort of qualify the other ones and have a go-to person, that's such a huge value. So.
I think, Joe, maybe you could qualify that as one of the other firms of the future, the pillars, is like you just work wherever you want, when you want to work. You know, if you want to live in 2 different places of the year, you could never do that when you're a zip code accountant. You're just stuck in one spot. So maybe that's an official firm of the future pillar. And then, Caleb, how's your audio now? Fingers crossed here. It's really low again, Caleb. I think you were louder before you tried to use your camera.
While Caleb works on that, can I comment on the anytime, anywhere access? I do believe absolutely that's a key component of Firm of the Future, and I would say it's part of the pillar of the just general Get Online. It's one of the many benefits. I spoke of data liberation, anywhere, anytime access, which lends itself to extreme client and team collaboration, is another part of that pillar. And so you might, as you're envisioning out the pillars of Firm of the Future, if there's one that's sort of foundational, a cornerstone, if you will, I would say it's that one. It's multifaceted.
Cool. And then, Ian, is there anything you want to add to any of this? Because you've obviously talked to lots of firms, and you know what the role of apps are playing inside of those firms. Is there anything you can add outside what's been brought up?
I'll give it from a couple different perspectives. One is from speaking to a lot of the accounting professionals in market, they're really struggling with understanding what are the right apps that they need to use for their small businesses, for themselves. And a few of the recommendations that have come out, one of the big points is, and this is for app developers to think about, is accounting professionals need to pick the right process and fine-tune the process. And once the process is stable, they'll find the technology that to embrace that process and make it so it's more efficient. But they shouldn't be chasing technology first and then deal with the processes second, because it's usually a disaster in the making. The second bit is that because there's a wealth of different applications out there, those that are trying to define and find the needle in the haystack are looking for applications that have multiple capabilities that they can solve. So in cases where it's a very niche market, that might not be possible, but for others that are enablers to their firm, it's those multiple processes that help keep the number of apps to a minimum. Because in the research that we've seen and we've done, it's become less of a honeymoon period now for using apps of the quantity of 20 and plus, but most firms are trying to aggregate down or consolidate to 4 to 6 that they use to serve their clients. And so you need to be one of those 4 to 6, and by doing that, you need to really understand closely where you match, what processes you enable, and ultimately how you're able to be found, which goes back to those people looking for apps in this realm are looking at places like apps.com because they want to find an application that works with what's core to their business. In this case, it's financial management, so QuickBooks Online is that place. And so when you talk about listing your application up there, it's about the ratings, the reviews, the descriptions, and everything else. Because if you can't get found and no one's using you and no one's actually talking about you, then you're not going to find a very easy path going forward. So it's a little bit of what I've seen from the research and from those out there that are trying to do this day in and day out.
Yeah, and so, and I think subjectively speaking, I don't have any data to prove this, but I've kind of seen the same thing. Like an accountant will have a suite of about 6 apps they'll use with all their clients. Maybe it's a bill.com, maybe it's hey, I'm going to use this expense app, this time tracking app, and then they add a 7th app, which is kind of the niche app. So it's a brewery software to help really run the core part of that business. But you're right, they kind of get. I heard some people at Scaling New Heights this year refer to them as the black dress apps. Like here's the apps, they're good for every client. You have your suite of 6 to 8 of them that you use with every client, and then you find out the niche apps that you need after that. Hey, Caleb, how's the microphone now? We'll give you one more chance here.
Okay, is that?
Oh, we can hear you. Perfect. Jump in.
Awesome. Okay, so
And you cut out again. All right. I'm sorry. Oh no. It's okay, Caleb. Well, it's technology.
I'm trying.
So those of you, well, Caleb touches the microphone one more time. Those of you who are watching kind of in that YouTube experience, there is a Q&A panel. Feel free to ask questions, and I will relay those back to the panel, and we'll get you guys some answers if any inquiring minds out there want to dig deeper. So our panel has thoughts on. One thing I'd like to ask, and I think I'd really like to ask this to Joe, because I think you have a lot of perspectives on it, Joe. Can you kind of describe your practices and strategies when you roll out, implement apps, right? Like how do you determine that? How do you pick the apps? How long do you look at apps? How long do you test them with 1 client first, 100 clients? Like how do you roll out? And this would be Joe Two Roads, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so we spent a lot of time talking with other firms. I think one of the neat things that's happening across the industry, technology is just increasing, and so is communication. So we've got some really close friends in the industry across the country that we just get to chat about different tools we're using. So there was a firm, really 2 years that we ran across. It was HPC. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of them, but I was just drawing them out about accounts payable. We had a system we created in-house that we printed all the checks using a very archaic tool. They, over time, convinced me that Bill.com was the way to go, and I was having struggles with it as I reviewed it, tested it. This was 2 years ago. I don't think it was quite the product it is today, but with their encouragement, we just kept pressing forward, kept putting more test clients in it, and at some point, as a firm, you realize this is working, and we need to push it through all of our accounts. So it's really communication first with other firms, testing it internally on our own firm's books, and then picking a couple test accounts, meaning clients of who are the forward-thinking clients you have and who's available and wants to try new apps. It's kind of how we roll out new stuff.
So you have some clients that are just a little bit more open to it.
Yeah, I'd say we'd have firm of the future clients too.
Okay, got it. That's probably good always to have. How about, Laura, how do you go about picking apps and selecting apps and rolling apps out to your clients?
Very similarly. I mean, certainly we want them to be listed on apps.com because I know from my experience with Arrow how rigorous that process is to get listed. So that makes me feel immediately comfortable about the security. And then, as Joe said, the communication between all of our colleagues in our community is very helpful because you can just post something on Facebook and you'll get all kind of feedbacks from people with different options that you could try. And then we'll look at, specifically, I don't want to get an app that's leading me down a road that's not the pain point I'm trying to solve, right? So I'm looking for a specific goal. When I'm looking for an app to solve a specific goal, I want to make sure that it solves that goal, right? So, and that the workflow that's required is going to work with my staff, with our clients. So Bill.com, for example, I mean, you have to think out what are the steps there, who does what exactly. And so you have to sort of map that out, design that workflow, and then, just as Joe said, test it on your early adopter clients, your clients of the future. I love that. And then roll it out from there.
Cool. Marnie?
So I want to kind of pick up on something that Laura said on the apps.com, which, you know what, I'm not a developer, so that kind of doesn't come into my consciousness as much as maybe Ian and Laura. But for me, I have to say, the place that I and a lot of people I think start learning about the apps is conferences like Scaling New Heights, QuickBooks Connect. So that's where the sort of seeds are planted, right? We're there, we're talking, we make a connection, which is, like I mentioned before, so hugely important, because if I need to reach out to somebody, I know right away, right, who I could reach out to. So I think a large part of it, those seeds are planted, and maybe, you know what, I don't have a need for an app right away, but maybe a couple years down the road. So I can't overstate the importance of just planting those seeds at conferences and with people. The other thing I think that's so important is social media. So the Facebook groups that people belong to or whatnot. You know what, I'm kind of a lurker, so I'm reading about these apps, I'm reading people's comments about them, and honestly, sometimes there's so many apps that really, maybe you're just looking for things to discount the app, right? So if you're hearing bad things, it's sort of like, okay, well, I'm going to put that on the side for a while, especially for us here in Canada, right? Because a lot of apps, what we would hear early on is, well, it works, but, right? So we get that but because of GST or sales tax or whatever the case may be. So I think social media is really important, and that's really where I hear a lot of buzz. And if people are sort of jumping on the bandwagon and, oh my gosh, this app is so great and you have to try it out, experience where it's like, yeah, it's not working so well yet, it really needs work. So for me, social media is really, really important, just like the apps.com, I'm sure, is very important for the outreach to the public, right? I think social media is really important to outreach to the bookkeepers and pro advisors. Just wanted to say that.
No, and that's really just to reinforce that point. I've really seen that. I really saw that. I thought a great example of that is HubDoc. I kind of knew HubDoc was going to pop and explode because you could sense it in the conversations that were happening between accountants to other accountants. Check out HubDoc, it's great. Check out this, and so 6 months to a year before then, I was like, yeah, HubDoc's going to pop soon. Like we're going to start seeing a lot more subscriptions, so much more interest in HubDoc, and that's essentially what happened. But you could sense it in those discussions between accountants and pro-advisors to pro-advisors, is that grassroots conversations. And it's not conversations where HubDoc's coming in and yelling through a microphone, right? It's just the accountants are just having conversations within themselves, and it just kind of reinforces what Joe says, right? Firm-to-firm conversations really help you figure out what you should be doing next or what apps you should be picking up next. And anybody can jump in on this. Hopefully, maybe Caleb can even jump on this. And you can all, what really makes an app great? Like, so when you see an app, like, what makes it great? Like, every app, and I've looked at a lot, and I have my own opinions, but I want to hear from you guys. makes an app great versus an average app versus below average? Like really, we'd love to dig into that. Caleb, I think your mic's working. Give it one more shot.
All right, is that working?
And no.
Awesome.
Oh, perfect. We got
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question is, what makes
Note for everybody that the millennials take the longest to get this technical stuff going.
I'm not sure what the problem is. So what makes a great app? For me, there's a couple different things. One is, first, it's got to solve that existed in the first place. And then how it solves that problem is key. Then it's got to integrate with the other solutions that I use. So, for example, QuickBooks Online and other key apps also, if they integrate between themselves to share the information, that's first. And then I look beyond my clients at what possibly they might need. And so those are the initial things. I go through other criteria after that, but that's my initial thing, is just finding something that fixes a problem that I see in the market.
Got it. Cool. Anybody else want to jump in? Like, what makes apps great? How do you
Solid integration, two-way sync, few sync errors. I love if it's dealing with financial transactions, if it pushes. We're starting with that now. Expensify just launched that this spring, right?
I'm looking at two criteria.
It's hard for me to keep up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at two criteria here that are primary, and some of it echoes what Caleb and Laura said. I'm looking for automation, and I'm looking for integration, and really those two play together to the overall goal of reducing data entry. So, and then there are other Asian words like collaboration and others that are also important. But if they don't have those two key components of integration and automation, not automating a whole workflow, that's lack of integration, or they're talking to apps, just only talking to apps when I key punch data, so that's integration. Combination of both, we have found that you can automate up to 80% of the bookkeeping workflow process for selected types of clients. And that's huge. And it's not just so that we can be more efficient and get a little bit of a spike in margins, because they're going to lose competitive advantage, and it's going to become commoditized again in this race to the bottom on bookkeeping work. But it's so that you can free up your clients' budgets to spend with you to focus on the trusted advisor piece. Accurate and real-time financial information that isn't. So at the end of the day, automation and integration do increase efficiency, but efficiency is not the ultimate metric. Effectiveness is.
Yeah, I might jump in on that too. I think developers that get what we do is extremely helpful. I've run across dozens of apps where the operational side of the app is fantastic, from running the business, whether it's a niche app or a general app, but they forget the end goal for a business owner is a monthly financial of knowing, is their business model working? Is all the cash that they've collected made its way into the bank? And they get missed quite a lot. So when you find a developer that knows accounting and knows, this app will find if someone stole money from you at the cash register, that's huge. When you understand our pain that, hey, I can actually, by capturing this, I can make your financials more accurate because I understand what you need. So it's not enough to have a slick, sexy app for the operation side of things. It's got to flow back into the books.
Got it. I like how you said, like, developers that understand accounting. So I'm really on this kick of, I'm always telling developers, you need to become certified in QuickBooks Online. get certified in QuickBooks Online. Make your support staff, your sales team get certified in QuickBooks Online. And so I'm really pushing on people at QuickBooks Connect this year. There's the hackathon on Saturday and Sunday, and then the conference is Tuesday and Wednesday. But Monday, there's time for QBO training. I'm really telling developers you should think about getting trained. So any of you developers are watching, yes, you want to learn QuickBooks Online, understand the workflows, because ultimately, if you're not solving the workflow and making the accountant more efficient and the accountant look like a hero to their client, they're going to choose a different app. Definitely, definitely.
We also do the roadshow and the certification tour for people who can't get to Connect.
That's correct.
Laura, were you going to say something?
Also do the roadshow or the QBO cert tour and go around all the cities.
No.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Well, actually, no. I'm hearing Laura fine. She's just saying the road shows and I'll add in there the VCon are a great place to get certified if developers can't, because their entire sales teams can't deploy to QuickBooks Connect. So that's a fantastic way, developers, to get all of your people certified on QBO. And those are free options, and one is virtual, one is localized, and reduces travel.
Maybe David can't hear, so I'll just jump in a little bit too. This kind of reminds me, I don't know if anybody watches Silicon Valley, but it's a very funny show, and it reminds me of one of the most recent episodes where they share the beta with their developer friends, and the normal user, whatever, is like, I totally don't get it. Anyway, so that's important, but I have a list of, they're a little bit different, but the top attributes, I'd say, of some of my favorite apps. And I actually wrote this a while ago for an article, so I looked back at it, but make me look like a rock star, number one, and some of the app developers are so great at that. I'll throw T-sheets out. Be nimble, so make changes and adapt to what your customers need. Free account is key for me. I want a free account to be able to try out the app. 30-day trials, I say at least a 30-day trial. Those 14-day trials are just not enough time. And for me, I would say price simply and preferably in my native currency, which would be Canadian dollars. So those are kind of not quite as big as the integration and those kinds of things, but those are sort of the after you get the product going. So that's my 2 cents, my 5 cents.
My add on this is for those of you that don't have accounting experience and knowledge, even once you've got QBO cert, it's best for you to create either a council or have a handful of accounting professionals that are more forward-thinking, that can sit with you and understand what you do and help steer you down the right course. We see time and time again those who think they know what they're doing but don't really know, end up developing something that's not really going to work, and they have a lot of retooling. But if you bring a lot of the folks, some of the folks here do some of that on their spare time, others do, but you can reach out to those local in your area, and they'll help steer you down the workflows that are actually going to work and keep you honest on what you're delivering.
Cool. Hey, my audio's back. Sorry about that. I can cut out for a second, too. It's going. Do you guys, I have a question, because a lot of developers are rolling it out. Actually, I think my audio just went out again. So I'm going to pose the question out there. I'm good? Okay. So a lot of developers are always asking, like, hey, should I spiff accountants and just give them $20 for every time they get somebody to subscribe to my app? Should I offer, like, a wholesale program for accountants? Should I give accountants a free version of my software? Like, where do you guys, like, prefer to see it, and how do you handle it? Because I think the model with value billing is changing, right? And I think that's where maybe wholesale is going to come in. But if you guys could jump in, feel free. But I'd really like to get your thoughts for developers on accountants programs, what you're looking for in those.
Yeah, I can jump in. We like free accounts for the accountant, just so that, I mean, a demo's really, really helpful. But having a month or two of using a tool, figuring out the kinks is good. And then really, for us, it's an account manager or someone that can speak our language and help us get creative of how to use the tool within our firm or the client. Having that's way more valuable than $20 a month off. I mean, if you can save me hours upon hours each month, that's way more valuable to me than just a quick and simple, 50% off.
Anybody else have any insights on that? What you look for in accounting programs, or did Joe pretty much nail it?
Well, I will say the certifications are good. I mean, it's nice to have a variety to be able to get a little bit of commission for sure. The first time I had like a PayPal commission check from just sharing a link on social media, I was like, holy cow, this is awesome. I think I might try to do this full time. But that's really nice. Having the certifications can be really nice. I think the free account component is key. I really think it's key for a lot of the apps anyway. Maybe it doesn't apply to everything, but for me, I like that free account. I like to have a nice long trial period. Like I said, 30 days, 14 really just doesn't cut it. And yeah, it's great when someone can roll out the certifications and that they mean something, right? Because if they roll them out and they're too simple, then it kind of loses its effect. I'd rather see it sort of more like the, certified QuickBooks exam, maybe even the advanced certified QuickBooks exam. But that's kind of what I like to see anyway.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're going to train staff. And once you've implemented that app and you're bringing in other staff and they need to learn how to use it.
Got it. So it's good news. Some people have started asking questions in the Q&A panel. So I'm going to rephrase those and get those out here so you guys can answer. Alex Serdlow asked, what about using the apps themselves? Do certain kinds of UI or UX influence whether or not you take the app or use the app? Are you willing to put up with clunky apps from a UI perspective if they actually solve the pain points you're having? So anybody could jump in on that.
I'll take that one. I'll say that in my experience, and I'm kind of the voice of many here, in my experience, most accountants are concerned about the functions of a program and its ROI for them as a firm, and they're more tolerant of variations of user experience between apps and dated user experience. And funny thing is sometimes it's even the inverse of what sells B2B, where the accountant would prefer to have more detail, would prefer to have a less streamlined interface, and more of the launch points, touch points, and data points within sight, because we're used to reading Excel spreadsheets and fine points of data. Now, that's a generality, not a universal finding, but that's been my experience. Now, on the other side, our clients want a very modern user interface that works well in mobile environments, that is very browser compatible, that's simple to use, and even within our clients, there's some variation of if it's the back office or the front. And there's a level of simplification from the client's front being most simple and streamlined to the client's back office being more robust, to our office being just give us everything you've got that'll fit on the screen. And so if there's an app, the challenge I would make to developers, and the way I would answer this person's question is, if you can create dashboards and user experience and aggregate data for us. Now, aggregate meaning aggregating across not only the client's database, but across all of our clients that use the app. Give us that power and keep it simple for what the client sees, and that's the perfect combination.
I'm going to agree with Joe, but I am going to also be honest and say I don't have a lot of patience for clunky apps. I really have just gotten spoiled. I'll just say it. I like a good UI, UX.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too and say that's one thing for me, and maybe that's just my new millennial type approach, but it has to have a good user interface for me. Otherwise, I don't like it.
QBO Harmony spoiled us.
It is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you're seeing that consumerization of business apps. Because for a while, everybody's okay when everything looked like 1996 Oracle.
It better not look like desktop anymore.
Right. But then when people, they got their iPads and they were like, wow, software can look awesome, it just created so much pressure. But I do agree with Joe, though. A UI alone will not drive it. Like, you have to have substance underneath the covers. There's got to be substance there.
Plus, here's something maybe to consider. I don't know. I really like the fact that QBO allows us as the accountant user to be able to do specific tasks that the users themselves might not be able to do. So I really appreciate where if the customer comes through me, then they either get discounts or that I have more usability of the app. So I have an accountant version where they would have the user version. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. But in thinking about that, I think that then I'm not competing. Then I'm not basically competing to do the work for these people, right? Because there's certain work that I can do for my customers that they couldn't basically do on their own because I have that accountant version or connection or whatever the case may be. So.
Got it. Hey, Ian, did you have any thoughts on that whole UX UI thing? Because I know Carbon is very, very slick, very modern looking. You've really taken the extreme from a design perspective, and obviously you've, like you said in the beginning of this panel, like you've talked to 1,200 accountants. Like, where's that fitting in on your experience?
Well, I think actually it was summed up pretty well beforehand. You know, it really depends on what you're trying to solve for and where it sits within the process. So for accounting professionals overall, it's depth of functionality because you've got to do so many darn things with your clients. The workflows that you're having to bring together and how you're piecing it all together is quite complex. And therefore, you know, you're doing more administrative consoles, you're doing more aggregation of the data, you're doing more presentation of that whole. It's interesting for what we do as a company with Carbon is we actually are sitting more in the operations and front office of an accounting professional's office. And that's, again, the front part of the operations there. So it has to be more simple for you to know what to do and what to do next. So it's not necessarily about showing everything on one screen, but it's showing the right things in the right place at the right time so you know what to do next. And so as a business app, you need to figure out where your application sits within the front office or the back office and what processes is enabled. And you want to make sure you're getting people to the right task at the quickest amount of time. Every click that you add in there is going to cost everyone on this panel time. And if you think about how many clients they serve, they're on average going to serve 80 clients. Take 80 clients and how many times they're going to do that a day. If you just have one extra click, you're costing minutes a day, times that by the number of days in a year, let's say 300. It's expensive. And while they're on value pricing or fixed fees or whatnot, every one of those hours adds up to lost productivity and lost revenue that they're going to absorb. So you have to be very mindful of what you do and what you place on the screen in order to make them work faster. Does that make sense?
No, that's great. That's a good answer. I actually just heard a podcast about UPS and like how they have the drivers hold their pen in a certain pocket versus a different pocket because it's that much more efficient, like depending on what handed they are. So yeah, it really adds up. And so whatever you do as an app, think about that as your UI, is the speed, not so much the prettiness. But you don't want it to be really, though.
And the resources, if you can give them, I mean, if UPS has to give them on their uniform that pocket, maybe give them that pen, any of the resources you can pull together to also make fewer clicks, but to make our work more efficient is key.
Yeah, one thing I'd add, this was something from Intuit's side. When we purchased Mint a long time ago, there was a concept called time to pie. And what that was how fast can you get somebody from the point that they start using your app to the moment that they have realization of the value the app provides. And inside of Mint, it was getting to your net worth graph. What is the one workflow that your app is going to do, and how many steps does it take to get to that moment of realization? So if you can thin that down to the smallest amount possible, you will ultimately win the hearts and minds of everybody using it.
That's a really good point.
Very good point.
Sarah Laidlaw just, she didn't have a question, but she made a great comment that kind of summarizes this whole thing up. Basically, a user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's not that good. And I fully have seen that over and over again. I totally agree.
That's awesome.
I'll see developers, they'll ask me for feedback on their app, and they'll be like, hey, let's do a webinar, and I'll show you how it works. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. Because if I need a webinar to figure out how to use it, it's probably going to be too hard to use for most people. So yeah, it's not a good way to show people how to use an app. We also got a question from Brianne Betty. I think Brianne actually is with the Geen app and the Grapes Wine app, Digify app. So they have 3 apps, I think, on apps.com. But let's select this question and bubble it up here out of the panel. How important is it for each of you to have an app that helps you streamline your relationships with your clients? Is that a pain point for you and your firms? Anybody can jump in.
I mean, I'd say we want to be sending apps to our clients that makes us look good. So anytime we're having to field a lot of calls regarding your app, it's not a good thing for our productivity or our confidence in your app. So that kind of goes back to the UI, that it needs to be so simple, just like an iPhone. A 2-year-old can pick it up and know how it works. I think that's going to streamline all of our communication with the client to be accounting specific or financial specific. You've got a good app if we're not talking about it.
Got it.
I think what Carbon has done here. I think what Carbon has done here is a good example of streamlining collaboration, because apps like his, Arrow does this as well. If we can route the clients from the client's need all the way through the workflow to the solution of the client's need in a process managed by the app, then that is the penultimate goal. But the important thing is that input from the client has to be part of the app's process. If the client has an input with us that's separate from the functions of the app, then we have to collect, gather, and load that into the app before it can then become streamlined. It's going to create not just minutes but hours that Ian was referring to earlier. So it's going to magnify that whole problem. So getting the client to where they can interact with the app, and that would include the collection and collaboration around documents as well. That to me is key.
Yeah, and I think as apps integrate, yes, you want an app to integrate with QuickBooks, but sometimes that's not the right path, right? Maybe the path is that app integrates with another app, then that app integrates with QuickBooks, and it all depends on the workflow. Yep. It's not the right size and the same fit for everybody. It's a little customizable, but the apps, to be honest, the apps I've seen that are the most successful are the ones that are starting to integrate with each other on apps.com now.
That's exactly right.
Not everything goes into QuickBooks and back out of QuickBooks. It's got to go in the order it needs to go for each business's workflow. So we're running down about the last 7 minutes here. There's no more questions in, but I wanted to have everybody answer this question. I'm sure this week you've spoken to a client, you have some headache, some problem you have to solve. Like, what app are you looking for? Like, what's the missing app? You're like, God, I'm sure everybody every day is like, I wish there was an app that did this. So I let Caleb go, and we'll just go left to right. But I would love to get your thoughts, your ideas on, like, what's an app you need, like, that's missing? And Caleb, jump in.
Oh boy, let's see. Just got back in the office here. But this week, I actually just met a big client that I do have something that I need to look for, and that is a conversion from it's a Sage product to QuickBooks, and just looking through all that. But other dream stuff, not sure. Let me think about that one for a little bit.
Okay. Ian, what about you? Is there some magic app you want besides your building?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So mine's a little bit more specific. I've learned that, unfortunately, Salesforce is the most atrocious product on the planet, and anything that obfuscates me or removes me from having to interact with it directly, I seem to gravitate towards. No offense to Salesforce, it's very powerful, but from running a business and all the things that come off of that, it's quite painful. I do think that there are some good sales tools out there, so we've been exploring with a lot of them. And one of the things that I have a webinar later today on is for all the accounting professionals out there is they don't do a great job on the sales functionality, and so there's probably some apps that they could leverage. But understanding how to drive revenue for a business is super important because that keeps their livelihood up. So anything around being able to accelerate that function seems to be something I'm looking at these days.
Cool. Good answer. Joe with Two Roads?
Yeah, anything that helps with capacity. I mean, I think where we're at right now is we're seeing the time devoted to closing the books drop from, say, 15 hours a month down to 10, and I think we're close to 5, but I want to see that get down to 30 minutes. So I don't have a dream app in mind, but anything that keeps automating the data part and the auto reconciliation, I think that's a big piece. We see some apps that do integrate directly with QuickBooks Online, but it makes our life a living hell to figure out what you did to try to figure out how to reconcile it. So I think more emphasis on auto reconciliation would be helpful.
The matching, got it. Joe Woodard?
Okay, so I'm going to dream big here. Okay, this is a big one. I want an app
Okay.
that will completely automate CRM, like we're seeing automation of bookkeeping process. So it reads my calendar, it has GPS, it knows the phone calls I've made, it's reading my email, it's reading my Slack, it's reading my instant messengers through my corporate, it's reading my text, all with my permission, and it's scraping all that information for data that's relevant to the sales and customer management, case management that I'm doing with my client, and all the way to the point where it knows if we change restaurants at the last minute, because it's not just the appointment, it's the GPS. It tells me where I had the meeting, how long the meeting ran, because it knew when I walked in, walked out, and as I exit each meeting, a prompt with a quick button that says, would you like to dictate your thoughts about the meeting you just left? So when all of that happens, it then goes into a larger system that ties into my accounting workflows, my consulting project management systems, and nice bow. All right, there's my dream product.
So, Joe, if you haven't checked out Cloze, C-L-O-Z-E, it's worth checking out.
Oh, is it really? Is it doing a lot of that?
It's one dashboard. Yeah, it does my cell phones, my text, my Slack, all my social media. It does just a little bit of buffer type social media posting, all your emails, your category. So there, and it's always every time I prepare a client, if there's a phone number in their email signature, it's like, hey, add this to the client. But you're right, like typing into a CRM is insane, right? This data is there,
exactly.
Just get it. So check out Cloze. It doesn't have, I don't think it has the GPS in it, and I don't feel like the calendar integration is deep yet, but it's really
okay. Well, it looks like it's more out there than I thought.
A personal inbox and Exchange. So
yeah. Now all of the apps on apps.com will integrate with Cloze. Yeah, exactly. Now they just need to all integrate with Cloze, and we got it. All your apps, David. Get on your developers.
Cool. Yeah, and I need to get Cloze to integrate with QuickBooks. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Laura, what about you? What's your app?
Well, I would really like for QuickBooks Online Payroll, Intuit Online Payroll, to allocate by customer. How about that? I'm talking about labor costing here.
Got it.
I'm not going to dream big until I get that one.
Just for
I want
that
that
one.
one.
Our own app. Got it. Got it. Oh, perfect. And then what about you, Marnie?
So I'm also not going to dream that big. Plus, I'm not playing that game of describing the app and then you tell me what app it has already been invented. It would be great to see some more CDR, client data review tools in QBO, or maybe there's an app developer that has a nice package of client data review tools. But that's a little bit, we're missing that, I think.
Yeah, if Trial Balance let us do a month-end close and attached supporting docs, Trial Balance can grow.
Yes, for sure.
Cool. All right, and Caleb, I'm going to give you the last bell here. Like, what's your dream app? And then we'll probably close after that.
I would just have.
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it, Caleb?
Oh yeah.
Come on, dream app.
I would just say, yeah, the biggest thing would be to automate. So automate everything, memorize, just similarly like what Joe was saying, but just memorize what I do and do a lot of the work for me as a robot type, and that way I can really focus on the relationship side with my clients. That's really what I enjoy, is working with my clients on a day-to-day basis. So automating and integrating and totally focusing on that side, and so I don't have to do all the data entry side or anything like that. That would be my dream.
Awesome, cool. And with that, I think we're going to shut down and end this. Thanks everybody for being on this panel for the Firm of the Future. Just to make sure, Joe Woodard, it's thefirmofthefuture.com, or is it qbfirmofthefuture.com?
It's firmofthefuture.com.
Oh, that's the hashtag.
Firmofthefuture.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. So developers, check out that site. You know, there's other resources for the accountants, but if you look at those resources, you can learn as a developer what's going through their mindsets in their heads. Definitely check out there. And thanks everybody for coming. I do appreciate it. Maybe we'll do this again in the future.
Cool.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks for having
Thanks.
us.
Thanks, everybody.
David.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. All right, bye.